Hello, how you doing? Here we are. It is August and it's probably hot all over the world. Definitely here in Japan, it is definitely a hot, steamy August day. But before we know it, it will be cold. So we got to take these days in and enjoy it as much as we can. But funny thing, I was thinking about the heat and it being hot everywhere, all over the world. It seems like it's all we're hearing in the news. But it made me think about the opposite, what it feels like to be cold. As a matter of fact, today, I want to share with you the coldest place I've ever been. I've been some cold places, but this one tops them all, including the North Pole region. This area where I went was colder than my time in the North Pole region. Believe it or not, this story is pretty cool. So let me just dive into it this week. This week, I want to talk about this spot that I really love. But first, I want to remind you that you can catch me here every week on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter X. I'll be here every single week at this time. Let me jump into this week's story. So, let me ask you this. Have you ever met a polar bear before? Very interesting creatures for sure. Um, the largest land carnivore on the planet. Yep, they are the ones. They rule in their area. Polar bears are it. So years ago, I was invited to go to Cape Churchill in Manitoba, Canada. We flew in. We're going to the tundra. We're going to live out there for actually like 3 or 4 days. So we fly in when we're going to this amazing spot in Manitoba, but we're going to live on these tundra buggies. We're out on the tundra, but we live in these tundra buggies. So this is the sleeping area that everybody comes to in the evening to eat and to sleep. But then in the daytime, you get on a tundra buggy and you go out on the tundra to look for polar bears. Well, you don't really have to look because they are everywhere. Manitoba, Canada, in November is the biggest gathering of polar bears in the world. Really cool spot. If you get to go, if you have the chance, definitely go. But once you're in the buggies, the tundra vehicles, you don't want to leave. As a matter of fact, you cannot because it is dangerous. Because, as I said, the polar bears are everywhere and they're hungry. So as you're sleeping, they are surrounding the buggies. They have amazing sense of smell. They can smell a seal, their number one source of food, 20 miles away. Incredible sense of smell. So they know we are here. And because they have no predators, they are number one on the food chain out there. Everything for them is a meal. So we want to stay inside the vehicle all the time. Once you arrive, you don't touch the ground until you leave again. Quite an experience. So I'm there to photograph the polar bears. How could I say no? We're in these vehicles, I have long lenses, and we're there to observe them, not bother them, just to observe them and photograph them. And it was absolutely amazing. The young bears are always practicing fighting. So you just see a lot of that all the time. Here's another very interesting fact. Polar bears are black underneath all that fur. Their skin's black, but they're covered in this translucent fur. And it comes out to our eyes being white. But if you look closely, you'll see even in this picture that there's that dark skin underneath. And that helps them stay warm and keep the heat as well. Living out there in the tundra, you definitely want all the protection you can from the elements. And they have it naturally. Very cool species indeed. But again, they are everywhere. So as I wake up in the morning and look out the window, the first thing I see is polar bears everywhere. And it's cold. It was so cold being there. Definitely the coldest I've ever experienced in my life in Manitoba, Canada. But it was incredible to be there, to see these polar bears. And they come right up to you because, again, they're hungry, looking for every meal they can. And we are safe. We're in these big vehicles. They're high up. I mean, look at these wheels. They're high up. We are protected. And that is wonderful. Now, polar bears can't jump straight up. They can stretch, but they can't jump straight up. They can jump forward, but in terms of like being on their hind legs and jumping up, they can't do that. So this picture here on the right, he's protected, but still, I must say, I was not taking a chance because I didn't want to find the example in the group and be the example and see somebody see a bear jump. We are using long lenses. Everybody has a rig for their camera. You are in the vehicles, and they tell you the gear you should get before you come. So everybody buys these rigs for your camera to use. If you're going on safari, you can use the same thing as well. But this is a safe way to use a long lens inside these vehicles. Super cool. Wonderful, wonderful trip. So once you're out there, all you want to do is capture every great picture of these amazing animals. They are also the largest predator out there. I think I may say that earlier, but they can go up to like 1,600 pounds. Super big animals. And this one was gigantic. When I saw him come, I'm like, okay, this polar bear is massive and he looks hungry. Beautiful to be out there having a ball. I mean, look at his paws, look at his feet. And as soon as they see you, they walk right to you, which is great. As a matter of fact, my favorite picture happened when this bear came very close to us. Now, I will be answering questions at the end. Good to see you all coming in. Please don't be shy to use that chat area and ask any question you'd like. I had a ball out there photographing polar bears, going everywhere, seeing them fighting, tussling, practicing because they want to be able to fight, period, and make sure they can also grab their prey and take them down when they need to. So they're always practicing, tussling throughout the day. They stop and fall asleep right by each other. Kind of funny to see that whole process of them doing this. Now, this is how close they come to you. This is a crew from National Geographic that was out there at the same time that I was out there, and we're all in the same type of vehicle, these Tundra buggies. And look how big these wheels are, but look how big that polar bear is. And look how close these guys are to it. We were all a little concerned seeing them being this close, but they're for National Geographic, getting images on the spot out there on the tundra. Really, really cool to see and experience. Polar bears are something else. I've seen them a few times now. This is my first time seeing a lot of polar bears in one place. If you go to the North Pole, you don't see that many this way and together like this. Cape Churchill, the spot you want to go to see a lot. Now, we all leave and go on our own around the tundra to find the best spot to be. And this is what it's like. This is all you see everywhere you look, just seeing this wonderful winterland as you go off looking for polar bears. And again, they're easy to find because they're everywhere. But for the most part, you are by yourself out on the tundra. As far as you can see, this is what it looks like. Kind of beautiful, but also kind of scary thinking about it's just you and those polar bears. Kind of crazy, right? Now, weird things do happen, and something crazy happened while we were out there on the tundra by ourselves looking for polar bears. The land is not just flat, it's rough and rugged. As a matter of fact, this is what happened as we were looking for polar bears. A wheel came off the vehicle. That's how rough this terrain is. Now, these are big wheels. As you can now see, these big wheels, one came off. And there we are by ourselves on the tundra, surrounded by polar bears. Kind of a scary situation to be in. So the guys get on the walkie-talkies and call for help because you can't just go out and try to fix this on your own. Um, Again, there are polar bears everywhere, and they are number one. So the guys come out, we get help to come over, they surround the vehicle, and we're not shooting, they're not shooting at the polar bears, they're just shooting to scare them away. So they come out, and this is how we had to prepare to get our vehicle fixed to get back to the base. It was a scary moment for a few hours because it was not a simple thing. So all the other vehicles come to help surround it, and all the guys come out with the guns to keep all the bears away. And then they fixed the vehicle, and we got it back. Incredible, incredible trip. Scary, yes, but incredible. But this was my favorite shot as this bear came very, very close, and I'm only doing portraits of people, fashion and beauty. So my world is shooting tight headshots for the most part. So this shot is basically what I do all the time. It was very, very cool to see and get a shot that feels like me. This was my favorite shot out there on the tundra. I do admit I had some great ones of them fighting and going back and forth, but this one is my favorite shot from my entire trip out to Cape Churchill. A wonderful, wonderful time. I loved it. Would love to go back there one day again because polar bears are fighting to stay here as global warming changes their environment. They're losing less and less ground due to climate change, and that's scary. But hopefully they'll be around forever, for generations, for us to all see if we can change things and make our environment a little safer. So this week I want to talk about something that we all need, all photographers. I want to talk about editing and talk about one of my favorite programs for editing. There are a lot of choices out there, but for me, I want to use a program that gives me a lot of flexibility for editing in different ways. Editing is not just retouching; it's also enhancing or taking things away that you don't want to focus on. So let's dive into this week's lesson. For those who don't know, my name is Matthew Jordan Smith. I've been a professional photographer for over 30 years. I'm also a Nikon ambassador. Love all my Nikon gear. My Z9 is my favorite camera of the moment. The Z9 and the Z8. Those two babies rock and roll. Today, I'm going to talk about tools of the trade. If you hear me take a pause, I'm taking a sip of my green tea. Good for our health. Have my daily green tea all the time. Today, I want to talk about my favorite program, and it's ON1 PHOTO RAW 2023. I love using ON1, a super simple tool, easy to use, no fuss. And let me just actually go right into it and show you why I love using it so much. Super simple interface. I can do a lot with it, from retouching to enhancing to taking things away that I don't want to be there. Very simple and very easy. So this is how ON1 works. I just went to a festival this past weekend and saw a picture that I liked. Whenever I'm taking a picture, I want to try to find the hero in the picture. I look at pictures as being a hero element and then a supporting cast. So the girl in the front, I consider her to be the hero. I want to make her stand out. Everything else is supporting cast. So what can I do to make her stand out? On the right is my panel to adjust everything in my image. So here it is, untouched whatsoever. I'm gonna go to my next slide here because now I can just do a little bit of adjusting by changing my exposure just a little bit, going for my contrast, taking my white point down if I want to do that. So those highlights I take down, my contrast I take up, my exposure I take up like a third, that little tweaking, just a little bit of enhancement to make the image come alive more, stand out, make it punchier. I love doing that right away to every single image. But with On1, I can do so much more. Like, for example, I mentioned the background being more like the supporting cast. I can make the background where it is not so apparent. I can turn anything I want. I can actually change anything. I can change any element that I want, the background, the foreground, you name it, or everything at once. So right now I'm gonna choose the background only. I want to make the background something different. So I'll go and change my background by selecting it first. And it's very simple to select it. And I'll make the background black and white. The color was not really a color, so it doesn't really help the image. So going black and white makes her stand out more. And this is a very subtle change. Going from color in the background to just the background being black and white is so subtle you almost don't realize it, but it does make my hero stand out more. And that's my main thing, to make my hero stand out in every picture. Now, I can go further with this one. So, for example, I want to just go and see what I've done. So here you see I've taken off the background. There's a preview to see what you've done. Here's that background with color. Again, it's very subtle, so it's hard to see at first. And let me just show you again where it's black and white. So there, black and white, their color. The color is almost like no color, so there's no advantage to having that color in the background. So I just took that color out, and it's just a simple click to do it. I love that about On1, how I can select the foreground, background, super simple, and make my adjustments. Now, I also have a lot of things I can do. There are a lot of filters. I always use a vignette. I can make it a very subtle vignette or a strong vignette. I can put on sharpening or dynamic contrast or blur or anything I want in this selection of filters. And I can apply it to the entire image, to the background, the foreground, to the people in the image. You name it, you have this control. And I love that about this program. It's so simple and easy to use. Now, let me just go further with this. I did the background before. Now I want to select the foreground. So I'm going to select all the people in the image and do my adjustment like this. So now I have just selected by just hitting the button for foreground, and it finds them right away, makes a mask right away, super simple. And then I can make my adjustment just on them. I can just go and brighten them a little bit more. I can do some retouching just on them. I can add my contrast or color all to just the people or the elements in the foreground. Super simple to use. And I love that about this program. This is why I use On1 all the time. But I do a lot of different types of things, and I've been shooting for a long time. Here's the before and the after, and this is very subtle. And I believe with retouching, very often it should be something very subtle, not so apparent. I want to enhance an image, not totally redo or make an image. I think you make the image when you're shooting. Post-production should be about enhancing what you already have. And that's why I love this program. Let's go a little bit further. Now, I've been shooting for a long time, and my first digital camera, that was in 2005. So I'm gonna go back quite a bit. But there are some pictures I have from back in the old days, 2005, that I really love. But for those who remember, in the very beginning of digital, those cameras weren't so great. The files were small, but back then, it was all we had. Things have changed a lot now. But what if you want to print an image that you shot back in 2005 or 2004 or earlier when you had your first digital camera and those files are small? Well, On1 has this amazing software called Resize, where I can resize my old files and make them like a file I shot today. And this is so incredible. I'm having an exhibit coming up where I'm using the software and I'm making all the pictures come alive. Now, I can do so much with this program. I can change my opacity of just the background or the foreground. I can do retouching on her skin. All those things all come in ON1 as well, and they're super simple to use. I love just using this versus, say, going to Photoshop and having to learn how to retouch. This is an easier way to retouch. I can go through and change anything I want. I can blur the background like I've done in this situation because that background was a little distracting to me. Again, she's the hero of the shot. I want to make her stand out, and everything other than her, I want to make that a little more subtle so it doesn't get in the way. So what my retouching does is I can go through, I can enhance every part. I can enhance her skin, her eyes, make her eyes slightly larger, like 5% larger, which is very subtle, but it does make a difference. Make them wider, brighter, make her skin glow. All that is so simple with ON1. And again, this is a great thing to do in terms of also taking your old pictures and resizing them. On the left is the original size of the image, 18 megabytes. This is my first digital pictures, and that's at 16-bit. At 8-bit, it's like, 10 megabytes. It's nothing. I can now take that file and make it like 45 megabytes or more. Super simple, and it doesn't destroy the image. It doesn't make it look pixelated. It makes it into a beautiful, beautiful image, better than the original, which is kind of cool and hard to believe that we are now in this place, taking my old pictures and making them better than they were when I shot them originally. And this will only get better and better. ON1 Photo RAW, ON1 Resize. Super amazing tools to use. I use them all the time. We'll be using them more in the future as well, and you should give it a try too. I love this program. Super simple to use, and it makes all my work, old and new, so much easier and better to present to people. So here you have on the left the before shot, here the after. Super simple, very subtle, but those subtle changes make a big, big difference in the retouching. Her eyes come alive. The eyes are what brings people into an image. I want those eyes to come alive. I felt in the picture on the left, the eyes are kind of dead. Image on the right, they come alive and they draw you in. That's the difference that I want in my pictures. This is one of the tools of the trade. All this month, I'm focusing on all the tools that we use as photographers to enhance our work. Now, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat area and ask away. So somebody saying like, oh, it's not so hot in Australia. That's right. You guys are having the opposite. It's your winter in Australia, and it's hot everywhere else in the world. I've got a friend at the gym who's from Australia. He's like saying, oh yeah, my mom and dad, they're both very cold right now. So I know you guys are having like 11 degrees there. That's cold. 11 centigrade, still cold enough. So I know we're going to change pretty soon. So enjoy it while you can, because very soon it'll be nice and cold here in Japan and you'll be having your summer. So thank you for being here. Thanks for asking questions and being here. I love seeing that. Somebody says Dutch tilt. I'm not sure what that means, but can you give me a little more information on the Dutch tilt there? Oh, love the face shot of the polar bear. Yeah, that image for me was it. I mean, I loved being out there and photographing the polar bears and seeing them doing everything. But that shot of me doing that face shot of the polar bear, that's by far my favorite of all the thousands of images I shot over those 3 days out there in Cape Churchill. It was an amazing, amazing experience. And if you get a chance, definitely go to Cape Churchill and take in the polar bears. The time you want to go is November. That's when you have the biggest congregation of polar bears in the world at Cape Churchill. So if you get a chance, definitely go. It's worth the while for sure. Thank you, Denise. Also, that was your favorite shot as well. Love seeing that. Love you guys for dropping in, sharing as much as you do. Love that. I'll be here every week to answer your questions. We're going deeper next week into more tools of the trade. All right, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for letting me share my stories and share my tips on green tea, because that too is important. I'll be back again next week to share a lot more. You can also find out more about me at photographylightingcourse.com. For those who are interested in learning more about photography or lighting, just go check me out at photographylightingcourse.com. This is my private teaching course where I teach you to learn lighting and so much more. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time and for being here. I look forward to seeing you all again next week. Wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, stay cool, or unless you're in Australia, stay warm. See you again sometime soon. Bye, everyone.